Welcome to the Talk Spot. This is Marcus, and today I'm joined by Butch Hartman, creator of the Fairly OddParents, Danny Phantom, and a number of other cartoons.
Oh, thank you, Marcus. It's great to be here, man.
Well, thank you for coming on. Yeah, so how did this show get started? I mean, how did you come up with the idea for the show?
I came up with the idea for the show because I really, I kind of the way anybody comes up with an idea for anything. I needed a job. I needed a job, and I was just leaving Johnny Bravo. I was working at Cartoon Network on Johnny Bravo, and that was ending. And I needed a job, and I was tired of working for other people. And I wanted to, I was like, I'm so tired, because I didn't want to lose a job anymore. I always wanted to be the guy who had the job the longest. And so I thought, I'm going to create my own show right now. So I sat down and I just started drawing. And I had come up with other shows before at that time. And I just had never really sold anything. And finally I said, I drew this little boy, because everyone writes what they know. So I thought, I'll do a show about a little boy. So I drew this little boy with a baseball hat. I colored his hat blue. And then every other drawing I did, my blue marker ran out of ink, so I colored his hat pink. And then I did that, and I was like, well, kids, I want to be able to move him from place to place really quickly. I want him to have some kind of a power, so I thought I'd give him a science power. But I couldn't do that because Dexter's Lab is already a show. And I always tell people when they're selling shows, always do your homework. I mean, you might have the greatest show of all time, but if they're already making a show like that, no one's going to buy your show. Always have another idea. Anyway, I thought I couldn't do science, so I decided to do magic. I thought I could take magic and pop the kid back from place to place. And so that'd be kind of fun. So do I give the kid the magic powers? Do I give do I give him a magic friend? I thought, I'll give him a magic friend. So I thought I started thinking, hey, Cinderella's kind of cool. So I'll make him like a Cinderella type of a kid. So I thought I'll give him a fairy godmother, and fairy godmother, that'd be kind of fun. But I've never seen a fairy godfather before, so I ended up coming up with Cosmo, and so the Fairly OddParents were kind of born there. And I'm like, well, okay, so kids like to have secrets, and they can turn into something when they're in his room and the parents come in. And so I ended up making a little fish drawing where they disguise themselves as fish, and they need a bad guy. And so I made Vicky the babysitter, and all of this took about 15 minutes. I'm not kidding around. It took like 15 minutes to come up with this idea. And then I originally sold it to Cartoon Network. I didn't sell. I pitched it to Cartoon Network. They turned it down. And then Fred Seibert was over at Nickelodeon, and he bought it from me.
Wow, I wish all $1 million ideas only took 15 minutes to work out.
You know what's funny? I know that it took 15 minutes, but it took a lot of years of getting there. Like, how to tell a story, what would be appealing, what I like, what I'd want to work on if I was working on a show for a long time. You know what I mean? Yeah. So anyway, but it was really cool. It's everybody wants to have their own show. I tell them they want to have their own cartoon show, but you need experience before you get that cartoon show, because you're going to have a lot of things that are challenges when you're making a cartoon show. Like, there's a lot of people you have to deal with. You have to have a staff of artists. You have to know how to communicate with them. You have to have a staff of writers. You have to know how to communicate with them. You have to know how to make your show funny on a daily basis. And when you get a show, it is a constant grind. It is a day after day, always moving the show forward, always thinking of ideas, always trying to keep it funny, trying to keep it, the editing, the music, the sound effects, the voice recording. There's a lot that goes into a cartoon show.
One question that I've kind of wondered over the years is, it seems like in cartoons, especially that are geared towards children, that it's a common trope that the parents will be very inept and very just stupid, I guess. I don't know how else to word it. Like, how did that trope, I mean, is that an actual trope, or is that just an oversimplification? Because it just seems like so many kids' TV shows are, they do have parents that are kind of stupid.
Oh, you know what? To me, it wasn't really a trope at that time. I just wanted to make Timmy's parents oblivious, because I thought, how could this kid have these magic creatures in his life and they don't even notice? They've got to be the dumbest parents of all time. And so just making them silly and oblivious was fun. And that's the only reason. I wasn't trying to insult anybody. Just wanted to make it really fun,
Well, I mean, Timmy's dad is just, I always loved that character as a kid and even now, where he's just so outlandish. I thought that's a unique twist to him, that he's not just one-dimensionally dumb. It seems like he's also very intense and also kind of mean. He's a lot of different things.
Oh, Timmy's dad?
Yeah.
Oh, totally. Look, he's got this. I mean, he's got this irrational hatred of his neighbor Dinkelberg, and Dinkelberg's the nicest man on the planet. And it is, you know what it was? It just comes down to whatever made us laugh in the writers' room, whatever was family friendly, whatever was fun, whatever made us laugh. We just went with. Because we just loved to laugh, and I love to laugh every day, and I love cartoons because they make me laugh. And there's a scripture in the Bible that says if you have a merry heart, it's good like a medicine. A merry heart does good like a medicine. And so it's like being merry, being joyful is like it's like almost like taking a medicine that makes you feel good. And I think people that laugh live longer, to be quite honest.
So you worked on Fairly OddParents for so many years. How did you manage to maintain its freshness? Like, how did you keep it from becoming stale, let's say?
We ended up making sure, no matter what we did on the show, that it was always the characters that were the funniest part. We had to keep the characters funny, because whenever you have a show of any kind, you can name 5 shows right now that you love, and you're always going to name shows with characters that you love. It all comes down to the characters. Yeah, so characters are important. So if someone's going to want to have a show, or someone's going to want to have any type of entertainment thing they're working on, or book they're writing, or movie they're writing, or whatever, it always comes down to great characters. Like Star Wars. The reason Star Wars is so great, or people respond to it so much, is not because it's such a great sci-fi show. It's just because the characters are good. People love those characters and want to be around them all the time,
I mean, that's a fairly good point. I mean, the characters that you've created personally, I mean, they've been very exciting. I mean, they're very, unique. I mean, even Timmy's teacher, was it Mr. Crocker? But even that teacher is just totally out there.
Oh, yeah, Mr. Crocker. Oh, Mr. Crocker, Timmy! Exactly. Mr. Crocker is an iconic, I guess you'd call him a villain, but he's kind of a bumbling villain. But just to make that character so funny and so pathetic and such a loser, and there's a ton of comedy there. He lives with his mom. He has no money. He's always hunting Timmy's fairies in a frustrating way. It's just really, really fun and really great to have a character like that is so iconic, and that you can write for. That's really funny. People will laugh with.
Mm. So one thing that I've always wondered about the Fairly OddParents show is, did you ever pitch the idea of making a Crimson Chin TV show?
Oh, yeah. When I was first doing the show, when we were doing the show, I pitched so many Fairly Odd spin-offs that would make your head spin, as a matter of fact. We pitched a Fairly Odd, we pitched the Crimson Chin spin-off, we pitched the Mr. Crocker spin-off, we pitched a Poof and Foop spin-off. I pitched a lot of spin-offs with Fairly OddParents, and none of them ever went, none of them ever got moved forward, which is no big deal. But you're always constantly thinking of new ideas and new things you can do to make your show live longer.
Well, it seemed like to me with Crimson Chin, like, I mean, at one point Jay Leno was doing the voice, right? If I'm not mistaken.
No, not at one point. He always did the voice.
Okay, all right. I mean, I always thought that show just seemed like there was just so much potential. I mean, the idea. I mean, it wasn't a show, but it just seemed like there was such potential to have a full-fledged TV show about it.
Oh, yeah. You know what? It's one of those things, man. I don't know. Maybe it was timing. Maybe they just wanted me to keep doing the actual show. Because Nickelodeon had given me so many things to do. I was already doing Danny Phantom and Fairly OddParents. And at the time, I don't think anybody thought someone could do one show well, much less 2 at the same time. And I was able to do 2 and do them well. But, Nickelodeon can't give every show to one person. And so it took me a while to realize that. Yeah, but I was always ready to rock and roll and do as many great things as I could. But, it was one of those things where I just kept doing the stuff they gave me, that they let me do, and had a great time doing them.
One thing that I like about your work, or that I've seen a lot, is that your content is very family-friendly. Have you ever, or I guess, what are your opinions about more adult-oriented cartoons, like shows like Rick and Morty and Family Guy? Do you think that there's space in the cartoon realm for cartoons that gear more towards adults or, teenagers, and then there's also room for children cartoons? Or yeah, what are some of your opinions about adult oriented cartoons?
Well, I have no problem with adult-oriented cartoons. I'm not going to make anything in that realm myself, but I think they're obviously very popular. You can tell by the success of Family Guy, South Park, Rick and Morty. Those shows are really funny too. They have really funny jokes, and but that's sometimes the subject matter, like the swearing, the sex jokes, things like that, the drug jokes. I really try and stay away from that. That's just me. I just don't believe in that sort of thing. I don't believe that because cartoons are geared more toward kids, and I know that adults watch them too. But a lot of kids, if it's a cartoon, they'll watch it because it looks, hey, it's a kid's, it looks like a cartoon, so they'll watch it. My job is to do what I can. Just me. This is only my own opinion. My job is to do what I can to make sure the next generation is inspired in a positive way and not a negative one. So I try and keep things as positive as possible.
I had a conversation with you might know him, I'm not sure. His name is Tad Stones. He created the Darkwing Duck TV show, and we talked about this idea of where kind of cartoons came from and where they are now. And he was a really good point when he said that initially when cartoons were aired, when they were shorts in front of films, that a lot of times they were actually more geared towards adults, that there were kind of violent and sexual undertones, and that it was kind of over time that whole thing kind of changed more into, okay, this is more of a medium for children. But because I've thought the same thing before, where I believe that certain people in society, that they view cartoons as, oh, this is just for kids. But then you watch a show like South Park, let's say. I mean, if you listen to what's being said in the situations, they're not very child friendly. But
no, exactly. No, he's right. The cartoons were initially made for adult audiences, and so they were able to kind of push the envelope back then. The morality sense back then is a lot different than it is now. But you're right. That they were made more for adults, but then television sort of changed that when TV came around and kids had more access to entertainment. That's when cartoons started being thought of as more of a child's vehicle. You know what I mean?
Mm. Well, when you were working on your various shows over the years, did you ever have problems with censors, or did the censors ever have to come in and say, oh, you have to, cut this segment out, or you have to kind of trim it down a little bit? Did you ever have problems with that, or that really?
We never really had a problem. I mean, sometimes they would say, oh, you can't do this joke, it's too adult. We would think, oh, okay, like if Timmy wanted to know where babies came from or something like that, we wouldn't be able to do that. Or sometimes we'd have a joke that was a little too grown up, like an IRS joke or something like that, So we ended up just, it's a network. You're working for them. You got to change it the way they want. Nickelodeon's a kid-friendly network, so I would just have to change it appropriately,
Well, did you have a character in the Fairly OddParents that worked for the IRS? I thought he was voiced by Ben Stein. Maybe it wasn't the IRS.
That character was HP, the head Pixie, and he was the Pixies. Yeah, the Pixies were the arch enemies of the fairies, but the Pixies had. Instead of having a fun, whimsical approach to magic, they had a very business-like approach to magic.
Okay, I clearly remember what they looked like. I couldn't remember exactly what their role was. So, all right.
Yeah, they were They were a very business-oriented bunch of magic creatures.
Man, if you had a chance, like let's say if you could adapt any pre-existing IP that exists in the world right now, what would you like to make a television show out of? Or what would be an IP you would want to make a television show out of?
Oh, wow. I'd probably want to make something anime. I'd probably want to make something like Speed Racer or Battle of the Planets, or I know One Punch Man's already a series. I really love that. Anything anime I'd probably want to do. I do really like... what exists right now that I really think is cool? I really like Guardians of the Galaxy as well. I think that'd be kind of a fun thing to do.
When I was thinking about asking you that question, Guardians of the Galaxy, actually, that was one property that came to my mind. Like when I was thinking about shows, because I was thinking, well, if exactly. Like when I asked you that question, I was like, well, what properties would I like to see you make? And that was definitely one that came to my mind. And also Speed Racer too, but that's because I watched you do a video and you mentioned the fact that you've been a big fan of Speed Racer for a long time. So I thought, oh, that would actually be an interesting show too.
Oh yeah, that'd be a blast. Only because I loved it so much when I was a kid, and I think it's something that they did a bad movie in the early 2000s, and I've always wanted to see a really cool version of Speed Racer, either live action or another animated version. I think it'd be really fun.
Well, it's really bizarre about that film is that it was by the creators of The Matrix. They were the Wachowski brothers at the time. Yeah, it was a really weird idea for a film for them, but
yeah, I could have been great. I mean, it's a great property, and I'd love to see it done correctly. I love the Wachowski brothers. I really love The Matrix. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. So I would always be into something that they would do. So let's see if they could do it again sometime, you know?
no, that's a good point. So I also looked, I saw online, and I'm a little unsure of the background of this, but I saw that you did some sketches for Crash Bandicoot, I guess, before the game ever came out. And I tried looking it up more about what your involvement was with the character, and I couldn't really find much. So, yeah, what was your involvement with the Crash Bandicoot character?
That was something that came about. And it's funny. I barely remembered it until I even saw the drawings online that I worked on this. This was like 1993, I think, and you probably weren't even born then. But 1993, I had a meeting with a friend of mine up at Universal. This artist friend of mine, I can't remember who it was, said, "Hey, these guys at Universal are looking to developing a video game. They're asking if I know any artists to come up there, and I thought of you. You want to go up there?" I said, "Sure, okay." And I was working at Hanna-Barbera at the time, just down the hill. And so my friend and I went up to Universal City, and we went to this big office, and these guys were developing a video game. And they say it's called it's a Bandicoot, and I think his name was like Billy Bandicoot or something, or I forget his name. It wasn't Crash Bandicoot, but I did a couple of designs of this Bandicoot. And when I saw the game years later, I went, "Oh my gosh, that's my design that I did." I think I actually had a hand in designing the game. I did a couple drawings for them. I got like, gosh, $200 or $300 to do these, to do these drawings, and then that was it. It was one meeting, and I think the drawings that are online are the drawings of the facts that I sent to Universal, and then I think that's about that. That's the extent of my involvement.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've seen some of those sketches, and it looks like, although the body that you drew is a little different, like at least the photos that I saw or the images that I saw, the body that you drew was more kind of like a ball a little bit, not necessarily the same proportions as Crash, where he looks almost like a human proportionally. But it definitely looked like the facial features seemed like there was definitely similarities, like in the way that you kind of drew his mouth and just his face. I think kind of looks a little similar to modern day Crash.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely look at the drawings I did, and I go, well, I think they might have, actually used some of that. So it's kind of a little, I guess, feather in my cap that I got a video game character in there.
Have you worked on a lot of video games?
I helped work on some of the Fairly OddParents video games, but only in the writing standpoint because all the characters were designed already. And so I ended up working on those and helped out with those. I've got a bunch of video games that I've developed for my app. It's called the Noog Network. It's on the App Store, and the Noog Network is an app that I've original cartoons, shows, and games. And the games that are on there are games I developed.
Oh wow!
There's one game called Flippopotamus. It's about a little ninja hippo that flips around and fights dragons. And there's one called Whack-A-Weenie Dog. It's like Whack-A-Mole with Weenie Dog. And then one's called Freaky Beasts, about these monsters that run at you, and you have to tickle them before they get you, and then that will help you defeat them.
Wow! Well, I'll definitely have to check those out. That sounds pretty cool.
Check them out, man.
One thing too, I was wondering, since you've been in television, you've worked in television for so many years, what are some ways that you've seen the influence of social media impact, like, let's say your writers' rooms or when you're developing, like story ideas? Like, have you seen a correlation between what people post on, let's say, Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and that actually having an impact on television shows? Or it doesn't really have, or does it not work like that, really?
I think, No, social media has a huge effect on the way we advertise shows now and the way we can get shows to our audience. Like, what's really cool is as I'm sitting here talking to you, I'm doing a drawing of the Fairly OddParents so I can put it up on social media after this phone call because, like I said, today is the 17th anniversary of when we first premiered. And I just want to get a drawing out real quick and thank all the fans. So social media really puts you in touch with the fans, allows you to interact with them a lot more extensively than it was when I first did Fairly OddParents. Because back then, I had to wait for Nickelodeon to run a commercial or I had to wait for, a magazine to come out or something. But this way, I can just I can get contact with the fans right now if I want. It's really cool.
Well, do you ever see things too where people, let's say, like, you post like the photo today, like the drawing that you're doing right now, like, do you ever see things that aren't necessarily that constructive though? Like, you post something and, and then in your comment section, somebody's like, oh, I wish this would happen in this show, or I wish that didn't happen. Do you see a lot of that or not necessarily?
As far as what people that are like saying negative things about the show?
Oh yeah, or even positive things, just saying, "Oh, I want to see this" or "Don't want to see that."
Oh yeah. Oh no, Oh no, it's great. The fans are great because I'll get fans that will say, "I love this episode," or "I love this episode," or "Hey, I wish you could have done this. Maybe you could do this someday in the future." And it's great to be able to hear the fans' responses and their interaction with with the show. And I love hearing what people have to say about things. It actually gives me more ideas to do more stuff in the future.
Well, I definitely have seen that, especially with your YouTube channel, that you really do. Like, I feel like there was one video I watched where you asked the fans to comment like 4 different times in like a 2-minute section. You're like, oh, if you want to see this character, let me know. Or if you want to see Danny Phantom memes, let me know. And it seems like you actually really elicit fan reactions. Like, you want to actually hear what they say. Like, at least in the YouTube videos I've seen you do, and I've watched a number of them, you're always asking for fan input.
Oh yeah. Well, I think it's fun. I mean, when I was a kid, if one of my creative influences had been able to have a channel back when I was a kid, I was able to watch, and they wanted to hear what I had to say. I would think that'd be a great honor, and I would have to definitely interact with that person. And so I think it's a lot of fun. I definitely take a lot of the fan suggestions on my channel. I really want to hear what they have to say, and I really think it's a lot of fun. So anytime I can have these people interact or say anything or interact with the channel in any way, I just think it's a blast.
So, I mean, you've even mentioned, like scripture or Bible scripture earlier today in the interview. And I mean, I've just read that you're also a Christian, and I was wondering, have you ever thought about making a show that was like a Christian centric show? Like, has that ever been an idea where you've kind of thought about before?
Have I thought about doing a Christian-centric show? As a matter of fact, I have. I have a show that's premiering tomorrow, actually, on it's called The Garden, 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 and it's going to be premiering on the Gospel Truth Television Network.
Oh, wow! That totally answers that question.
That's an online streaming network. Yeah, there's only 4 episodes right now, but I'm putting a crew together, and I'm going to keep working on that. But I'm having a great time working on that so far.
All right. Well, perfect. Yeah, I guess the one last question is, besides shows that you've personally worked on, what would you say is your favorite cartoon of all time?
Oh boy, my favorite cartoon of all time. If I had like gone to a desert island, I would probably take with me one cartoon. Okay, now this is excluding my own. I would probably take a collection of Warner Brothers cartoons. I think the Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck stuff was something that really influenced me as a kid growing up, and I really, really love those cartoons. Even to this day, the writing is so special on those. Rabbit Season, Duck Season, Rabbit Season. I just love those shows, and I really think those really influenced me. I think that'd be a lot of fun to have those. So that's probably my biggest influence is Warner Brothers stuff.
I'm perfect. Well, thank you so much, Butch, for coming on. How can we follow all the stuff that you're doing online? Like, where can we go to watch more of your content and learn more about what you're doing?
Well, I appreciate you asking. You can find me on YouTube at Butch Hartman. I have a podcast channel called Speech Bubble on YouTube. You can follow that. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. I'm pretty much everywhere there's social media. So you can find me somewhere. I promise you that. I'm also going to be going on Twitch very soon, too, and streaming live videos there, doing some drawings. So check me out over on Twitch as well.
And then you have a network as well, you mentioned earlier, right?
I do. It's called the Noog Network, Noog. So check that out too.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Butch. We definitely appreciate it, and have a great rest of your weekend.
All right, bro. Thanks very much.
Thank you. You too.